here's the thing. Career in theater is a bit of a misnomer, that term, and I'll explain that in a minute. Do you know the term peeling an onion? To do such and such a thing is like peeling an onion. Do you know that term? So the idea of the term is, you know, you take a layer off the onion and there's another layer underneath, and you take a layer off that and there's another layer underneath, and you never really get to something that's a solid, clear, and specific center, but you're always just going deeper and deeper towards the center of the onion. For a person thinking about a career in the theater, doing that the idea of taking layer after layer off a problem is what a career in the theater is all about. That's the kind of person who tends to be excited by a career in theater. You know, you watch TV shows and there are all the folks who are, you know, in the drama club, and they're all portrayed as people who are bad at math and who are a bit self-dramatizing. And I can't deny that there's a bit of that going on in theater, but the fact of the matter is that theater people are problem solvers. And that's really what goes on. And I don't mean problem solvers in the sense that, oh, you know, this is a difficult show and we got to figure out a way to do it. I mean problem solvers in the sense that for an actor, really what you're trying to figure out is, well, you're starting with just a thin layer of evidence, aren't you? You've got this script in front of you. So all departments in the theater have this thin layer of evidence, and that is just some dialogue. And we all know, because we all have conversations every day, we all know that the words that we say are reflections of something often much deeper going on inside of us, right? So an actor just starts with this thin layer of evidence, which is the words that are spoken, and maybe if they're lucky, a little bit of information that the playwright gives them, and then they start to peel the onion to try to figure out what's going on at the deeper and deeper, ultimately the deepest levels of a human being. The cool thing, though, about that is that if you are playing that role, then the deepest center that you get to is going to be different than if you are playing that role, because you guys are different people, right? So the reality of you, the artist, changes the answer you get to, despite the fact that you start with the same surface evidence, which is why you can get 5 different guys playing Hamlet, and you're going to get 5 different Hamlets, even though the words are the same. So that's what happens. That's what I mean by peeling the onion for an actor. For a director, it's the same thing. That's what I do. I work professionally as a director. And so I start with the script, and I start a year in advance often, because I've got to have answers for designers, and I've got to have answers for the company. I mean, the company that hires me has to be reassured that it's going to be a good show, all of that kind of stuff, right? So I start with the same thing. I start with this thin layer of evidence, which is the words on the page, and then I start to go deeper and deeper. I do research. I do as much research as I can. I research the playwright. I research the content of the play. Say it's a historical play, I don't know, say it's Ibsen or something, and it's set in Norway in the late early 1900s, well, then I'm going to research what's going on there, right? I'm going to research, say I'm doing Hedda Gabler or I'm doing A Doll's House, then I'm going to be researching early ideas about feminism, right? So I want to get to know what people are thinking about. I'm going to read a bunch of academics and what they have to say about the play, and then I'm going to settle down with the play and I'm going to see what I think. At the same time, I'm going to do, you know, sort of tangential things. I'm going to look at what painters were painting at the time. I'm going to look at what poets were writing. I'm going to look at what other playwrights were writing about. I want to get a sense of the context, right? So I'm just peeling the onion. And then I get into rehearsal, and I'm skipping over the design meetings for a second. I get into rehearsal, and then I'm working with a bunch of other artists who are also peeling the onion, and we might all get to slightly different answers. So then my job is to manage all of those other artists so that somehow we all get to the same or a similar kind of center of the onion. But it's an iterative form, meaning that we get it wrong, then we do it again and we get it wrong, and we do it again and we get it wrong, and hopefully by opening night, we do it again and get it right. Sometimes, though, you don't. Sometimes you don't get it right till closing night, which can suck. But that's one of the things that happens, right? But the fact of the matter is, the run of the show, the performances of the show isn't something that you lock down. Now all of a sudden we're finished and we stop working. No, all the way through the run, we keep working, trying to get closer and closer to the center of the onion, to understand and reveal what was at the essence of the play, what was in the heart of the playwright. Playwright does the exact same thing, for those of you thinking about playwriting. A playwright sits down with something, an idea, an issue, a feeling that's burning inside them that they need to write about, and they figure out how to write about it. Now, there was a play recently at Manitoba Theatre Centre called Shakespeare's Dog, written by a local playwright named Rick Chafe. It took Rick 5 years to write that play, not because he has really slow handwriting, But because he wrote a draft and then wrote a draft and then wrote a draft and wrote a draft, and it took 5 years for him to actually say, to actually peel the onion down, to actually say the thing he wanted to say. It took 5 years. Now, just a little window into what's going on financially for a playwright. Playwrights make 10% of the box office. So because he did it at Manitoba Theatre Center, he made 45 grand on that show. But that's 45 grand amortized over 5 years, the 5 years it took him to write the show, right? So if you look at that in terms of yearly income, not so great. Okay, so that's what a playwright does. A designer does the exact same thing. Designers go, okay, I'm reading all these words, I've got all of this evidence, I've got the surface layer of the onion. Now what am I going to do? I need to take the feeling of this play, as well as solving the technical, just the spatial or the costuming or the lighting or the sound demands, the immediate obvious demands. There needs to be a sound cue of a telephone ringing here. Those are the obvious demands. But then there are the less obvious demands. How do I support the production in communicating a feeling to the audience, communicating some kind of a feeling, and how do I make space or light or sound or costume support that? Sometimes we think about costume design as just being, okay, well, it's Ibsen and it's set in whatever, 1910, so that's going to be 1910 authentic costumes. Well, that's true. You might want to be doing authentic period costumes, but then you make choices about color, and you make choices about texture. Rough or smooth, shiny or coarse, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Dark or light. You might see, one character more in warm tones and one character more in cool tones. Those kinds of things communicate something to the audience. They peel another layer off the onion. Then there's the stage manager. How many of you have stage managed? We got one. Is that it? One? Seriously? Oh, a couple more back here. All right, good. So you know it's the hardest job on earth, right? Stage management is a tough job. It requires an incredibly organized brain. And what you're there to do is essentially to be the mom or the dad of the whole company, to be the organized one who makes sure everything gets done on time, who makes sure there's a record of everything, who makes sure that there are accurate lists, so that all the people who are working to peel the onion have as much support as possible, so that every step into the center of the onion that they go, they don't lose track of where they came from. So that could be recording blocking. It could also be just making sure all the props are built. Do you know what I mean? And then there are technicians. The technicians who work brutal hours, sometimes work all night, and are often very well paid to do it. Good career choice, better than being an actor. So then you've got those folks, and they're doing the same thing. They're making sure that the lights are hung. They're making sure that the set is built. They're making sure that it's built safely. They're making sure it's built solidly, because they, too, are a piece in that journey towards the center of the onion, making sure that every element works together to tell the story. And more than to tell the story, telling stories is fun, but that's only the top of it. That's kind of only the top of the iceberg. What we're really trying to do when we make plays, and I'm talking about deep, dark, heavy Shakespearean tragedy plays or frothy British farces, doesn't matter what, is we're trying to reveal something about what it is to be a human being. And that's the hardest job on earth, to actually, with honesty, reveal something about what it is to be a human being. That's the cool thing about doing what we do. Now, people will tell you that actors are egotists, right? They're extroverts who just want the glory and want to get laid. And that's not really what's going on. I mean, side benefit maybe, but that's not really what's going on, right? An actor is actually trying to reveal something about what it is to be a human being. Reveal something from their perspective. Again, your perspective of what it is to be a human being is different from yours, just because you have different lives. You're different people. So you get to bring your take, your spin on what it is to be a human being to your work. So we come back to this idea then that any career in the theater is a career of problem solving. And I'll give you an example. I just directed a production of Angels in America, Millennium Approaches for Winnipeg Jewish Theater. Now this is a huge play. It's one of the biggest plays written in the late 20th century. Won the Pulitzer Prize in the mid-90s, and it kind of pioneered a whole bunch of new stage technology. It was one of the first plays where, because it was structured almost like a movie, where scenes blended seamlessly into each other, and so what you had to have is you had fly tower things dropping in and out, and you had scenes on trucks rolling in and rolling out. So you had all kinds of things going on like that. Well, the theater that I did it in was at the Bernie. You know the Bernie at the Asper campus, the Asper Jewish campus? Tiny little theater, not even purpose-built to be a theater, it's purpose-built to be a lecture theater, right? So now I've got this problem of doing this giant play, 8 actors playing 21 characters. There's a scene where a giant book has to come up out of the stage. It has to, in a huge amount of sound and light, it has to crash open, it has to burst into flame, and then it has to disappear. There's a scene at the end where a giant angel has to appear hovering over the stage. Well, I've got a grid that's only 15 feet high. I've got no trap door under the stage. Why? Because the stage is solid concrete. So I've got a bunch of serious technical problems. But they aren't just technical problems. They're a problem of how do I tell that story within the limitations that I have in the most fantastic way possible. And in doing so, give the audience an experience that's going to blow their minds. And how do I do that on a budget of $100,000? Which sounds like a lot of money, but believe me, it's not a lot of money. So that then becomes the journey. That becomes the fun. And you have to be, to have a career in the theater, the kind of person who gets stoked to figure that kind of thing out. Not to figure it out so you can go, I'm so awesome, I figured it out. But to figure it out so that you can go, hey, I've actually told the story in a way that's compelling, in a way that moves the audience, in a way that says something about what it is to be a human being. Now, people who work in the theater are doing all of that in a climate where every year funding cuts are deeper and deeper, meaning there's less and less money to do the theater. What does that mean? What that means then is that theaters have to raise their ticket prices. How many of you here go to see shows at Manitoba Theatre Centre? Right, a bunch of you do. Good. Expensive tickets, huh? Even for students, they're expensive. I'm a professor. I can't afford to pay to see every show at MTC. I can't afford it. So what happens? We cut funding, ticket prices go up, fewer people can go. What does that suggest to you about what's happening to live theater? Right? People are stopping going. How many shows have come to your school that just sucked? Have you seen really crap shows come to your school? Like crap. Because let me tell you, I've seen some crap at schools, yeah? Not too bad. That's not bad. I've seen some really bad shows go to school, which kind of undermines one's enthusiasm to do it, right? So we've got this thing where theater as an industry is dwindling. It's not doing so well, which means then that in terms of peeling the onion, in terms of being a problem solver, we need theater artists who are actually excited about doing something new, about changing the art form to make it feel necessary and relevant, and about finding ways to get that work out to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to go. The fact of the matter is, how many families in Winnipeg can afford to take their whole family to the Manitoba Theatre Centre? And I'm not blaming them. They are just dealing with the funding they've got, right? They're just doing the best they can to get by. But the fact of the matter is, we want as many people as possible to see this kind of work. So in the theater, then, we need people who are thinking about new ways of making theater and new ways of getting it out to people. All right, there you go. There's my pitch in terms of a career in the theater. So what I'm suggesting to you then is that a career in the theater isn't really much of a career in the traditional sense. Now, let me explain that. It isn't a career in the traditional sense because we typically tend to think, okay, you know, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm going to do law. And maybe if I'm so inclined, I'll take my law degree and I'll convert it into doing some politics or something like that, right? So it's a fairly clear line of career. Well, now, my career, here's how my career started. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Northern Ontario and I got involved in community theater. Which was awesome, saved my life, changed my life. It was the best thing I could ever have done. I got involved as an actor. But then, because, you know, community theaters are always short of people, I got involved in technical stuff, doing lighting and sound, learned a ton doing that. That was pre-CDs, so we're literally talking about reel-to-reel tape and stuff, which was pretty fun. I go to theater school, training to be an actor. I go and do my master's degree, training to be an actor. I get out, I start acting, and I realize I'm not a very good actor after all that training. So there I am, not a very good actor. What do? I get in on the ground floor of a theater festival, and suddenly, on the ground floor of that theater festival, I'm a lighting designer, I'm a production manager, which means I'm coordinating all of the technical aspects and making sure there's money for it. I become a company manager, which means I manage the acting company, means I'm responsible for paying them, I'm responsible for making sure they have a place to live, I'm negotiating contracts, so I'm doing administrative work. From there, I become a teacher. From there, I become a director. Long, circuitous route. Now, the main thing that I do is direct, but sometimes when I direct, I do my own sound design. Had to learn how. Sometimes when I direct, I have to do my own lighting design. Had to learn how. If I have to, I can do my own set design. Had to learn how. So a career in the theater is almost never a straight line career. Even for those who know, who have the skill to be an actor and to actually get hired. The fact of the matter is, in the late 90s, 0.01% of all actors made more than $100,000 a year. 0.01%. So you think about that. Your average actor earns less than 20 grand a year. And those are the folks who do theater and film and television on the side. So that's the kind of career you're thinking about. So what does that mean then? That means you have to do other stuff. You start your own company. You do your own writing and directing. You have a job on the side. You have a Joe job. We call them Joe jobs or day jobs or whatever, right? The joke is always that actors wait tables. Waiting tables is good because waiting tables is a flexible skill that you can take anywhere. So not a bad idea. But you're going to spend a lot of time doing your Joe job. So you want to make sure your Joe job is something you actually like to do. Cool? Make sense? So it's not a career in the traditional sense because you end up having to be a jack of all trades. And that's really important. So what does that mean for you then? That means that when you go to theater school, if you go to theater school, you want to be taking classes in production, in the technical end of things, because there is always work for technicians and there is rarely work for actors. Interesting, right? Even worse if you're a director. There's almost no work for directors. You end up having to make your own. I built my career as a director by doing my own stuff until enough people saw it and enough people liked it that they started hiring me. But for years, I did my own stuff for no money. It's kind of how that goes, right? You invest in your career at the beginning. Okay, cool. You then, in the summers, you get together with your friends and you put together fringe productions where you are maybe the producer, or maybe you're building props, or maybe you're doing some of the design elements, so that you learn how to do that stuff, so you have that experience. You fill in grant applications. You apply for grants, most of which you won't get, or most of which you'll only get 50% of, but you learn how to write a grant application, and with every application you get better at it. These are the things you need to know how to do. You go out on crew calls. I worked for a rock and roll company in Toronto building stages for a couple of summers in university. I learned so much doing it. I was able to pay my rent and pay my tuition thanks to that company. You learn to do that stuff because you know about anthropology? Do you know about anthropology? The cool thing about anthropology is it is the sort of meeting place of all the arts and sciences. You need to know about physics, you need to know about chemistry, you need to know about biology. You also need to know about cultural history and just political history. So it's a meeting point of all the arts and sciences. Theater is like the anthropology of the arts. It's the meeting point of all the arts and the sciences. You have to be good at math. I'll explain why you have to be good at math. Say my friend in the fashionable green shirt here, say he decides to be an actor. Well, then he is a business, right? Right away, you've decided, I am the business of guy in the green shirt, and so that's him. Now, all of a sudden, it's like owning a mom and pop shop on the corner. You're a business. So now you're a business which says, I'm going to sell a product, and that product is me, the guy in the green shirt. So now he's going to auditions, he's going to get a professionally formatted resume, which is essentially like a flyer, right? Here's a flyer extolling the virtues of this product, guy in the green shirt, right? He's going to go and he's going to get a professional headshot, a professional photograph of himself, because that headshot is a product photo, just like a product photo of an IKEA sofa, right? He's going to go, this is what I look like on a good day. This is me, guy in the green shirt. This is the kind of stuff I can do. Look at me, charming, I'm all of these things. Buy this product. And he's going to go out and he's going to sell that product to film companies, television companies, and theater companies. They're going to pay him. Somebody eventually is going to hire him. Out of every, let's say, 25 auditions, he'll book one gig on average, right? So that's 25 job interviews for one job. Think about that, right? So he gets that job. They pay him. They don't take tax off its source, so he has to understand how to do all of that himself. He has to figure out that there's no RRSP for him, there's no retirement package for him, so he has to plan for that stuff too. So you actually have to be capable of being a small business, a personal business. Everybody in the theater, virtually everybody in the theater, is self-employed. So there are business skills that you have to have in order to make it as a career. Cool? Does this make sense? Okay, good. I did want to talk about theater schools for a second. There are a bunch of different kinds of theater schools in Canada in terms of places to get started. There are liberal arts degrees. Liberal arts degrees are places like the University of Winnipeg, though that's about to change. University of Manitoba has a liberal arts degree in theater. University of Toronto, Queen's, Dalhousie, and Halifax. These are all universities that have a 4-year BA in the theater where you're not doing tons and tons of practical work, you're doing some practical work and then a lot of academic work, so you come out as a very well-rounded student. There are also fine arts degrees. That's much closer to professional theater training. University of Winnipeg is about to create one of those. University of Alberta has one. York University, Concordia University in Montreal, University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Those are BFA degrees. So if you're really thinking, I want to be an actor or I want to be a technician or a designer, and I know that's what I want as a profession, then you might consider those kinds of programs. And then there are also conservatory college programs. And for those, they don't care what else you learn. They just want you trained as a theater professional, right? So you have to take a couple of sort of obligatory English classes, and that's about it, I think. So that would be places like National Theatre School in Montreal, George Brown, Ryerson, and Humber in Toronto, Studio 58 in Vancouver. All right, all of these places give you different kinds of training. All of these places have different kinds of programs. Many of them have programs for designers, directors, and technicians. Though typically, if you're interested, how many of you are interested in directing? Oh, I thought we might get out of it. 3 of you? There we go. Okay, 3 of you who are interested in directing. Most places don't actually give you directing training until the graduate level because they tend to think about directors as needing a bit more life experience. So you're better off taking acting training and the occasional directing course. Yeah, and then when you've been around for a while and you really understand how acting works, take some technical courses, take some design courses, understand how all the different departments work, then go on and take some directing. The reason why that's important is because as a director, you need to know what's possible and what's not. Right? Sometimes you'll have designers or technicians tell you, oh, that can't be done. So it's important to know if they're telling you the truth or not. Because sometimes what they're really saying is, that's a lot of work and we don't want to do it. So it's important to know. It's important to know if that's what's going on. Similarly, it's important to be able to talk to actors, designers, and technicians in their own language. They appreciate that. It's a sign of respect. I know a lot of directors who don't know how to do that. And it makes their lives more difficult, and it creates more of a divide between them and often the technical side, right? So that becomes an important thing in terms of thinking about your training. Anything else I wanted to say about all this? It's a bit scattered, I know, but that's because this is a profession that is a bit scattered. You try a bunch of stuff, and then you follow your talent. And sometimes, an important thing is, I know some people who are amazing theater administrators who really want to be actors. And that's cool, you know, good for them that they really want to be actors. But the fact of the matter is their talent lies in theater administration. And a moment has to come when you go, okay, I tried that, I wanted to be an actor, but I see where my talent lies, and then follow your talent. The same thing is true of being an actor. I thought, now look at me, skinny guy, big nose. I thought I was a leading man. Coming out of theater school, I thought I was a leading man. I thought I'd be playing leading man kind of roles. And it took a couple of years of people going, you have no pectoral muscles, son, to realize that I wasn't going to get leading man work. Till I realized I was nerdy friend. You know, it took a while for that to drop in. So an important aspect, hey man, and that's how it is. It's a tough business. So that kind of clear-sighted look at yourself in the mirror and understand what you are is a really important thing in this industry, because there just isn't a lot of room for people who tell them they're one thing when tell themselves they're one thing when they're actually something else. I'm skinny best friend. As long as I stick to that, I get work. As soon as I try to go for, as soon as I want to play whatever, Romeo, not happening. right? So that's an important thing. And then same thing for yourself as a director. Much as I might want to be the kind of director who tells simple, clear stories, I'm not. I like spectacle. That's the kind of director I am. If you're a designer who has no interest or doesn't really have a feel for expressionist weirdo design, then don't try to do it. Pursue the kind of design that is actually suited to your talent and your insight. Realistic design might be the thing for you. Yeah. So to be able to look in the mirror and see what's actually there and work from that becomes a very important part of this, and becomes the only way you actually move in an honest way towards the center of the onion.